my will is God and overdrive, or whether you say the world has all the power and I can't do what I want, I won't do anything, I'll leave, I'll shut up shop and retire, I'll give up, which is the way the astrologers, traditional astrologers deal with the 12th house. And that's the person who lacks faith and crawls in a hole. It's true that the 12th house is inner in the sense that it's the unconscious. It's the search for the absolute at the unconscious level. And for the people who are not inhibiting it, of course a lot of astrologers were, and then they saw clients who were, so they saw the negative side of it. But when Gokhan worked with highly successful, famous people, the top of the line, the planets in the 9th and the 12th house were the strongest keys to their character and their vocation, both. And the most probable place for Mars in sports champions, in surgeons, and in military leaders, the most probable place for Mars is 12th house. There were more Mars in the 12th house than all the rest. You could block the Aries and become a victim and a martyr, or you could express the Aries and say, my will is God, and I will take over the world and make the world be the way I think it ought to be. Or you could run away from the world to find your own world in your own terms, create your own world in your own terms. Lots of choices.
So astrology, and I guess it's pretty good that it doesn't give us specific details, because if it did, it would mean we had no free will. But it shows our state of mind and not the actual action that we will do. The water, on the other hand, is the subconscious side of the mind. That's an indication that we are sensitive, empathic, compassionate, but also sometimes a bit vulnerable, because sensitivity just means that we can be hurt if we get upset by other people's opinions and attitudes, and the sensitivity in the chart is very strong with this water emphasis. This means that there's more than average psychic ability. It's the ability to tune in to other people, to sense how they're feeling, and to get hunches and intuition. It's a very, very strong feature in the chart. And so water can be a hazard if we're not handling it, if we're too sensitive, too emotionally vulnerable. And water is kind of like a double bind. We need alone time to process the subconscious, to work inside, to meditate or analyze ourselves and others. But we also need connection to other people, emotional closeness, bonding, people to share life. So it's a juggling act, trying to be able to be close to other people some of the time and still have your own private space. Now, fortunately, there's also some Earth in the chart. Earth is the practical realist. So that's the ability to work. That's the details of the job with the sign of Virgo, and it's how your work fits into the world, your role in society, your status, your career in the larger sense with the Capricorn principle. Both Earth and water do want security, but the Earth is the practical, the grounded, and the water wants emotional security, either protecting ourselves or protecting others. You find people with a lot of water and earth. Either of two extremes are quite possible. If they are insecure people, then they're wrapped up in their own problems and they're really totally selfish and self-absorbed. If they're people with faith in a higher power and empathy and compassion, then they're taking care of everyone else. They're Father, Mother, Savior of the world. But that's the example of one extreme of the earth-water emphasis. The person is basically insecure and can only think about their own needs. They just have no empathy for anyone else. We always attract someone who will give us a chance to learn. We can either learn voluntarily or we can wait till we get pushed into it by pain. We wouldn't be here if we weren't here to learn. That's what we're here for. And I always hope we can also do some enjoying of the journey along with the learning.
Why is this person so anxious? And I see that as most commonly in horoscopes, it's a combination, an emphasis on 4, 10, 12. 4 is Cancer, Moon, 4th house. 10 is Saturn, Capricorn, 10th house. And 12 is Neptune, Pisces, 12th house. Mixtures of those most often, where they are reinforcing each other and not being counteracted by other things. With letter 4, it's the baby-mother relationship, basically, the emotional security. If the person is totally into being baby and not into being parent with any sense of power, then they're often dependent and helpless and anxious. And letter 10, until it's become our power to accomplish something in the world, is the power of the universe and might sit on us. Take away what we want, do what we don't want. A lot of astrologers are real paranoid about Saturn. I talked to one once, and she literally stayed in her house for 3 weeks, never went outside the house. She had a bad Saturn transit and wouldn't go out of the house. And it's like the world's out there and it's got the power and it's going to do me in. And letter 12 is faith. If you have the faith, you have no problem with letter 12. I mean, if you have a reasonable faith, not an unreasonable faith. But if you lack faith, you can get a tremendous amount of anxiety with letter 12. So the combinations, the baby side of Cancer, the power still in the world of Capricorn, and the lack of faith side of Pisces, mixtures of those, Saturn, Moon, Neptune, particularly the planet form is the most important always, can have a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of phobias, a lot of depression, very often. And they're counteracted by fire, which is faith, confidence in yourself or in a higher power, and by doing something in the world to prove that you do have some power in your own hands.
Yeah, there's nothing more restless than to have Uranus and Mars in aspect. Yeah, fire has to do things. It has to be in action. It has to keep moving. And it's okay to sit and be a spectator some of the time and just talk, which satisfies the air. But there is enough fire here. You've also got to be in action. But the essence of letter 12 is that final oneness. And with it you have 3 major forms. You have the artist who creates beauty. And I think letter 12 is always prominent in the really great artists, whether it's Neptune or Pisces or the 12th house. The really superior artists always have an emphasis on letter 12 because they're looking beyond the here and now pleasure of Venus, which is the other artistic planet, the pleasure of the world right around us and sensual satisfactions, and the aesthetic graphic arts of Libra, line and form and design, photography and architecture and things like that. But Neptune is looking for the ideal beauty, the ultimate infinite beauty. And then the second form, of course, is the Savior. Anybody who's healing, helping, teaching, preaching, making a better world is a little bit of that Savior trip. Trying to make the world closer to our ideal of how it ought to be. Doing something to bring the world to that ideal. If we're doing either of those, we're okay. If we're not, then we have the third choice, the painful one, and that's being a victim. And the victim, of course, is the person who has that same beautiful dream as the artist and the Savior, but he just isn't doing anything very effective with it. He's just wishing the world were beautiful, wishing the world were ideal, and feeling miserable because it isn't. Or he's looking for in ineffective ways, whether it's drugs or alcohol or illness or psychosis, fantasy on a backward. I can't find my beautiful dream. The world has to give it to me. I just will retreat from the world. I don't like that ugliness. It's miserable. I don't want to face it. So that's, of course, the negative side of this, which is unfortunately too emphasized in the books. Instead of the positive
potential, the artist and the savior. So if you see anybody playing victim, get them into artist or savior. The one thing you do have to watch when you're playing savior, that you don't go just a little too far. Because remember, if the savior goes just a shade too far, the savior becomes martyr, who is then victim. So you have to know when to stop being savior. Up to a point. When you start to feel harried and victimized yourself, you've gone too far. So you do your savior thing because you enjoy doing it, gives you a sense of fulfillment, and when you start to feel martyred, quit. The other warning signal for would-be saviors, and astrologers, many of them are would-be saviors, they really does attract the savior types. The other warning signal, which is very important for astrologers, is if you see that your help is weakening the other person instead of making them stronger. Watch out. And that is so easy for astrologers to slip into. You get those clients that call you for a good day to buy a new hat. You know, what should I do today with my life? Watch out. The people who want you to take total responsibility for their lives, every decision in their life, that's not helping. That's weakening the person. You've got to pull back. Even if you enjoy giving help, you've got to pull back when you see that happening. It's a pretty big responsibility to take on the responsibility for somebody else's life. In fact, I think in ancient China, somebody here may know, if anybody saved anybody else's life, like pulled them out of a river when they were drowning, they were responsible for them the rest of their life. If they didn't want to work, they had to support them. If astrologers really took that seriously, they might do a lot less free advice giving. And remember, the greatest thing you can do for somebody is to strengthen them, to give them insight that will help them to live life more effectively, help them to see where their problems are and do something about it, and not come to you to give them answers on how to live life day by day. My own feeling is that that kind of astrology, that good day, bad day astrology, is really destructive because it tends to put all the responsibility out there, like I can do what I like on the good days and stay in bed on the bad ones and everything will be okay. That does not work. You cannot escape your own character. In the end, it's going to get you. You've got to work in your character inside, and then the outside will take care of itself. You don't have to pay any attention to what the sky is doing now if you're in tune with yourself, if you're living at peace with yourself. So letter 12 is gorgeous, great, beautiful. Neptune is one of my absolute favorite planets. If you're doing the artist or the savior and knowing when to stop being savior. And remember again, it's a polar principle where Virgo really was the nitty-gritty work of doing that job, but by itself, just a job for its own sake, just for the sake of doing a good job. And Pisces is the vision of the perfect world that we want to move towards. And look how much they need each other. If you have only Pisces, you have a dreamer who doesn't do anything except dream about the beauty. And if you have only Virgo, nose on the grindstone, the job for its own sake, for its own sake, for its own sake. But together, the vision and the willingness to work towards it, the ability to work towards it.